Good morning. It's Sunday morning, and I am Ron, and we are live, and this must be Sunday Morning Live with Ron. How about that? I have actually moved myself out from under my patio cover, which is why you'll see in a second I am wearing my hat. But I wanted to share with you some of the beautiful, beautiful morning here in Northern California. So just listen for a second and enjoy the sounds. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous day out here. So, where am I? Here I am. As you can see, I'm wearing my hat. This actually turns out to be a very good object lesson because one of the things we're going to talk about today is exposure. And as you can see right now, on my webcam, I am way, 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 way overexposed because it's averaging. So it's exposing for these grapefruit trees behind me, which means my face is way whiter even than usual. So, good morning. I'm Ron. This is Sunday Morning Live with Ron, and we're going to get underway. I need to set up my windows so I can see that if anybody joins and looks at any of this stuff, so that I can say hi. Nobody on Instagram yet. There should be me on Facebook, but I'm not doing Facebook through my regular channel. So, well, it's a whole new setup for me. So bear with me. We will get this down. I will figure out if I don't see your comment, it may be because it's in an area that I don't see the comments. For example, YouTube, I haven't figured out how to get enough space on my screen to read comments on YouTube. But be that as it may, we are here, we are live. So what happens on Sunday mornings live with Ron? Well, first off, we're going to show you our brand new pictures that we're adding to the gallery this week. I go back and forth between calling it gallery and a store and whatever I'm going to call it. I don't know yet. But it's where you can go and you can see my work, and you can buy prints of my work. You can buy limited edition prints of my work. You can buy coffee mugs and pillows and iPhone covers. My little iPhone cover with my, that's a picture from Italy that's on my site. I bought that iPhone cover through my site. And all of those good things happen at ronolcottphotography.com, just so you know. Then after we talk about the new paintings, we're going to talk a little bit about taking better pictures. And today our topic is an introduction to exposure and what's called the exposure triangle. And then we're going to look at some more at my Sony a6000, which was the camera that was taking that beautiful picture of the sky when we came on board. If you want to see it again, it changes all the time. I really, really am liking that little setup. So, but we'll look at some of the features with the a6000. And specifically as they pertain to Shift P. No, P is photos. No, escape. Control Shift C. Camera. Now, all right, I gotta go back over here and switch my camera back. Well, let's not. Let's do this. Control Shift P. There we go. All right. we're going to jump right into showing you this week's photos. All right. So this photo here is called Like Lemmings to the Sea. Now, it may be a little hard to see. I have put, hang on, I've got to get back to my screens. There he is. I have put the size so that it doesn't get cropped off too much on Instagram. Instagram doesn't do good with the whole wide format, which is what we shoot in. So I've tried to make it fit inside the vertical, so that's why it may be a little bit short for all of you. Anyway, my problem, not yours, hopefully. This is from Yosemite, late October. Went for my birthday with a friend of mine. We went to Glacier Point, my first trip to Glacier Point, which was very, very nice. It's a place where you can actually look out across the whole valley. And this was one of the few waterfalls that was still going in late October. I don't know which one, but evidently you can walk into it because you can see off to the right at the top of the falls there. You can see all the people headed towards the falls like lemmings to the sea, which is where that name came from. So, like lemmings to the sea, that's our first picture. Okay. Our next picture, so that's picture number one. Picture number two is called Dewy Flowers. Not particularly clever, but this was taken at Santana Row. I forget the date. It was either during a November trip, probably during a November trip, possibly during our December trip at Christmas time. But we were there, and they had these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful planters that had these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful flowers in it. And I like this one particularly with just the little hint of our state flower, the California poppy, down here in the corner. I don't know what these are. Maybe all of you all can let me know, because I'm lost. I don't do specifics on a lot of this stuff. I just think they're pretty, so I take the picture. Dewy Flowers is the name of this one. This one's called The First Golden Rays of the Day. This was my trip up to Reno to take sunrise and sunset photos. As you can see, I did get up and I did take pictures of the sunrise as well. So this is a sunrise photo looking out across the Sierra Nevada as the sun just clears the horizon there. I like the optical illusion of all the repeating suns here. It's something that lenses do. They can repeat, they can flare. This was kind of serendipity. I am not quite mastered how to control that yet, but I liked it. Again, from Reno, Nevada, this is First Golden Rays of the Sun. And then our last picture is called Cocktails Anyone? This is a tavern in Benicia that when we weren't locked down, I used to go to on Tuesday nights because they have open mic, and I would take my guitar and I would sing a few songs and perform in public. But it's just a real nice lounge with this big long brick wall and comfy sofas, and I was very impressed with the lounge. It's a classy place to be. I like it. So that's the Relic Tavern, R-E-L-L-I-K Tavern in Benicia, California. If you're ever in the area, and which would mean that we're free to move around again. But hopefully we will be able to do that soon. I don't think it's going to be that soon, but hopefully we'll be able to do that soon. Do get to the Relic Tavern. If you're there on a Tuesday night, you might see me in my guise as Ron O. Troubadour, and or just Ron O. And I do have another site that we're going to get going soon for Ron Olcott Music, just like Ron Olcott Photography, where I will have some of those performances. It's already on YouTube under Ron O. Troubadour, but we're going to be rebranding that. But anyway, Relic Tavern, Benicia, California. Wonderful, wonderful place. They make a mean mac and cheese, let me tell you that. But don't tell anybody, because I'm following Weight Watchers, so hard to fit the mac and cheese in with your points on Weight Watchers. So those are our 4 pictures today. Cocktails, anyone? And first golden rays of the sun. First golden rays of the day. There we go. Dewy Flowers. And like lemmings to the sea. So, if you drop in the comments, just let me know what one is your favorite, and I'll be glad to send out all of my proofs. I do, as always, have them printed out on cards in case that whole thing failed. But so I will be glad to send you my proofs if you just let me know which one you like. So that is good. Quick check, see if anybody's here. Yeah, we won't do that. I apologize. I'm still learning how to work all these chats and everything else at the same time. But next topic, topic 2, is going to be talking about better photography. And part of better photography is learning about exposure. And you'll hear a lot when you start studying photography about the exposure triangle. That's because there's 3 things on your camera that make up the exposure that you see. Now, what is exposure? Exposure is simply the balance of light and dark areas in your picture. Right now, my face is way overexposed. You can't see any details in it. Here, it's even worse. Look up in the sun. Okay, hopefully you can't see any details of my turkey neck there either. But because it's overexposed, there's too much white here. Okay, the trees behind me are in the shadows, so they're a little bit underexposed. You don't get a lot of detail from them because there's not enough light coming from there. So how do we control the exposure? Well, let me tell you, there are 3 parts of the camera that control what the exposure is on the print that you finally see. Okay? The first part is aperture. Okay? And the aperture simply is a fancy big long Latin word that refers to how big is the opening of the camera that goes to your lens. Okay? If you look at my logo, okay, that little thing in the O represents the aperture of the camera. Okay? It can get more open, let in more light, or it can get less open, down to a little pinpoint and let in a lot less light. Okay? So the more light you have, the more exposure. The less light you have, the less exposure. So how do you adjust for that? Okay? So there are several things that aperture affects, and we'll talk about those in future episodes. But there are times when you want to have a really big aperture for the effect that it gives you. Okay? And there are other times that you want a really small aperture for the effect that it gives you. Okay? How do you compensate that? With the other 2 sides of our exposure triangle. Okay? We've got aperture up here, Okay, down in this corner, we'll call this corner, okay, we have the shutter speed. Okay, so one way to get less light on your exposure is to shoot with a faster shutter speed. Now, if I click back over to that A6000 right now, okay, you can see down here in the corner, okay, f-stop refers to the aperture, and 8 is kind of mid-level-ish, okay? But you see that in order to compensate for the fact that it's shooting right into that bright sun, it's going to go really, really fast. It's going to try to fire the shutter at 1/2500th of a second, okay? Whereas if I refocus it, okay, and move it someplace darker, okay, you see over here, with that same f8 setting, it's going to want to shoot at 1/80th of a second. And I'll talk about why it's this that adjusts instead of this when I get to talking about the camera itself. Okay? But that just gives you an idea of the relationship between the amount of light in your scene, okay, the amount of aperture, okay, how big the opening is, okay, and how fast the shutter goes. Now, the third piece that affects all of this is what's called the ISO, okay? And that is simply a measure of how reactive the sensor, nowadays, your digital sensor, how reactive your sensor is to light, okay? It is a electronic analogy to what used to be done on print film, okay? When you used to physically print onto film, there were different chemical combinations that were more or less reactive to light, okay? And they standardized all those, and they call it the ISO level, okay? So that is now this side of our triangle, right? So how big is the opening? Yeah, how big is the opening? How fast is the shutter? Nope, how fast is the shutter? See, I'm looking at myself mirrored. How fast is the shutter? How reactive is the camera? So I'm going to switch back over to my A6000 again. And you see I'm set on auto, which means that it was setting the ISO automatically. Okay. You see, if I say ISO 100, now my f-stop is staying constant. That's because of the mode that I'm in. You'll see that it changed my speed to 1/40th of a second, which is a little bit below what you are going to be able to keep steady handheld. Generally speaking, 1/60th of a second is about what you can do handheld. But if I go ahead and click here and raise my ISO, the higher the number, the more reactive your sensor is. Okay, so if I raise it to an ISO of 800, you see that my speed has changed to 1/320th of a second. Okay, so like 5.5 times faster than, no, 8 times faster. We were at 40th. 8 times faster when we went from 100 to 800. Okay, you start to see a relationship there. All right. Okay. What happens if I change my f-stop? Okay, if I change my aperture, the larger the number on the aperture, the smaller the opening. Okay, so I've gone to f36. Now that's a really, really tiny opening. And you see that the shutter changed to 1/15 of a second, even slower. Okay, even at ISO 800. Okay, whereas if I change my aperture, we saw that f8. Okay, it's at 1/320th. Yep. And then if I go down to, because I've got zoom on, let's zoom out, it will go lower. Okay. If I zoom all the way to f3.5, yeah, turn that back on, you see that we're down to 1/1600th of a second. So that's really fast because I'm shooting at ISO 800. All right. So there actually is a tool, okay, that you can go to online, okay, that will help you learn about this. And I can't see what it says up there, but it's called the something exposure tool. But you can see it. I just can't read it. Okay? So it allows you to change the shutter speed. Oh, no, I'm not in the actual. That's just my image. Okay. Let's go here. Okay. It allows you to change the actual shutter speed. Okay. And you see as I shoot faster, the image gets darker. Okay. So that means my aperture is all the way open, okay, f1.8. So I need to up my ISO. Okay. Now something interesting happens. You see that as our ISO gets faster, the picture gets very grainy. But I can overexpose it by upping the ISO. I think that's a higher ISO than my camera even goes to. Okay. But why would you want a fast shutter speed? Well, here's an example of why you might want a fast shutter speed. Okay. That looked like a big worry blur, but it's actually a wind vane. And with a fast shutter speed, you can stop the action of the wind vane. With a really big aperture, okay, a big opening, a very sensitive sensor, and a very fast shutter speed, you can stop that action. Okay? So when you see people that have, for example, pictures of hummingbirds and such, where they've stopped the wing action, they've gone very, very fast. It is probably very, very bright. They've opened up their aperture just as far as they can, and they're shooting at a relatively high ISO for outdoors. Now, this is an indoor scene in low light, so you had to go to 2560. And you can see from that image that to do that, it gets what we call grainy. And we'll talk about grainy a little bit later on in future episodes. But so just take a look at that tool. It's called Interactive Exposure Tool. You can Google it up. There's exposuretool.com. Okay? And it will help you learn this relationship between the three sides of the triangle. If you, okay, bring down the size of the opening, you either have to go faster or more sensitive. So if I get less sensitive, open this up, and I have to open my aperture up. Okay. So again, definitely an indoor scene with indoor lighting. So these numbers, 5.6 is what the minimum aperture on this lens is when I'm shooting in any kind of zoom. Okay. This is a 1 second aperture. Okay. Very, very slow with ISO 400. I would never get those results outside, and certainly not outside today. Okay. So, that's a little bit about exposure. And next time we'll talk about exposure, how it affects sharpness in your images, and what you can do in your camera to help adjust for that. Thankfully, for most of us, there is a mode, even on the fanciest $5,000 camera you can buy right now, there is a mode called auto. Okay? If you're not comfortable working with exposure and f-stops and apertures and shutter speeds, use auto. Don't be afraid to use auto. Okay, when you take a picture with your smartphone, you're using auto. And auto is just a fine way to go. And when you feel like, there we are. When you feel like branching out some more, then, get some training, come back and look here, start to learn about the exposure triangle, start reading the manuals on your camera, and pretty soon you'll be shooting much more interesting pictures because you've taken control of more factors. Now, as usual, I've talked my way into only having 3 minutes to talk about this next piece, but we're going to talk some more here about my Sony a6000. Now, I talked a little bit last time about the fact that it is mirrorless, so you see it's a very slim. It looks very retro. It looks very much like an old film camera. This used to be with film, this would have been a fairly high-end point and shoot, okay? But one of the things that this camera does is it does have interchangeable lenses. Let me take that off. It does have interchangeable lenses, so I can take this lens right off the camera. I have another bigger lens that I forgot to bring out with me this morning, okay, that will shoot wider angle, okay. Okay, so I like that. I like the different modes. Now, right now, I am shooting in aperture mode. Let me switch back over, find my cursor. Where am I? There I am. There. Okay. Right now, I am shooting in aperture mode. Okay. You can freeze and read that. Okay. But aperture basically means that when I spin my little dial back here, that what I am changing is the aperture. All right. You see that the f-stop number in the bottom there is what changes. Okay. Since I don't always know what I'm going to run into, and 8 is a good compromise, we'll stay on F8. Hint, there's the bunny. Okay. But the other modes that it shoots in, it will shoot in shutter, which means when I change the button, roll my scroll back here, I am changing to a slower and slower shutter speed. And you see that it tries to change the aperture, okay? And I can make it way blown out. I can make it way dark, okay? All right. So, and then program, which changes aperture and or shutter. No, it sets aperture and shutter, okay? But you can set the ISO, anything else that you want to set. So it's not full program. It's not full auto. These are the auto modes, and my particular camera has a couple of auto modes, okay? Or you can go full manual, which means that you can set all 3 parts of it manually, okay? And then there's like memory recall. You can have presets, shooting movies. You can do a sweep panorama. Scene selections is they have done some pre-selected scenes. Okay, so there you got portraits, you got okay. So they have some pre-done camera settings, and they'll adjust a lot of that stuff automatically for you. And again, the two modes. Now, I prefer to stay on aperture priority, uh, and we'll go over that in a future. Okay, we talked a little bit last time about uh, okay, about the display on the back, and it has a viewfinder. When I put my eye up to the viewfinder, the display turns off, and vice versa. Okay, uh, it's got to be a weird display. I can't see it in the sun reflection here, but it's got to be pretty weird because it's only on my lips. So, we'll shoot at something nicer over there. So, I've got the screen display. I love having a viewfinder. The viewfinder was one of the things that I did not, that I definitely missed with my Canon when I was shooting last summer. So, the Sony a6000, it has lots of modes. It has lots of interesting features. And I just want to show you one last thing about the a6000. We've got to go here. There we go. Oh, that's my cheat sheet. Can't have you looking at the cheat sheet. Okay. But I just want to show you why I say I don't know anything about my a6000 yet. Okay. So this is the menu. Boom. Okay. So on the camera, there are 2 pages. Boom. On the settings, there are 6 pages. Oops. 6 pages. Okay. And then there's wireless settings. Okay. Boom, boom. Okay. So we can set this up to connect via Wi-Fi. Okay. And then you can actually add applications to it. I discovered I actually can do remote control of this camera from my iPhone. So I can set it on the iPad, set it on the tripod, rather, and remotely trigger, which is nice because then you don't get camera shake. All right, so we've got applications. Boom, boom. Okay. Then we've got playback. There are 2 pages of that. And then we've got setup. And there are 6 pages of setup. Okay. I'm going to be years learning how to do everything that this camera can do. All right. So don't be discouraged if you get a camera and you run it in auto mode. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay? There are some amazing pictures being taken in automatic mode. Cameras are incredibly smart now. So don't be afraid to use auto mode, and don't be apologetic for using auto mode. Okay? Most things that I'm reading about professional photographers is they will keep it on aperture mode all of the time. Okay? Because there are artistic things that happen in aperture mode that you don't get quite as much in other modes when you're shooting just regular daytime stuff. So know that those are there. If you decide you want to get off of automatic Aperture mode would be the next one to try to master. Well, we've run over by a few minutes. I've been doing that, and I've got to stop doing that, but I apologize. Meanwhile, here's today's bulletins. I want to remind you that my Mother's Day sale is going on. If you use the code WFH2020 at checkout, you'll get 25% off. And remind you that today is the very last day that you can order and guarantee arrival by standard post for Mother's Day. It takes about 2 weeks by standard shipping to get things in. So we're 2 weeks away from Mother's Day. I know, scary, isn't it? But today's the deadline. You have until Wednesday or Thursday if you're willing to pay for overnight shipping. All right? Not much more. I wouldn't go past Thursday even if you were paying for overnight shipping. Okay? Mother's Day sale, work from home 2020. Next week, we're going to have a signing ceremony. As many of you know, I do a giveaway on my website, ronolcottphotography.com, every single month. May 1st is Friday. We'll be announcing the winner on May 1st. I will be signing the print and doing the dedication on Sunday, May 3rd, live, right here. I know, exciting, me with a pen. I know it's not quite the same as a presidential signing ceremony, but me with a pen is just an amazing thing to see. I don't know. I'm just making this stuff up. All right, so thank you for watching. Thank you for enjoying my stuff. Thank you for all the beautiful, encouraging comments. I really appreciate it. Meanwhile, I hope everyone is well. Stay safe. Stay home. Wash your hands. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. And become the person you would like to meet. Till next week. Bye. Now, you see, I do that great closing, and then I have to wander around here and go find the right window. Well, first I have to find my cursor. And there he is. It's white on white. It's hard to see. Okay, and then we go here, and then we turn all of those off.